across the world all the best. These are tough times for all of us. People have several questions about different aspects of the crisis that India faces today. Vaccination being a very, very important aspect of it, because that's the way out. Well, there are other questions in India being raised today. We'll discuss those questions at some other time. But right now, let's focus on India's journey so far through the immunization program from 6 to 8 and how we achieved what we achieved. We have with us two people who frankly don't need any introduction. Mr. Jairam Ramesh, Mr. Sam Pitroda. The world knows them as people who've brought in fresh new ideas into governance, into public policy, and helped India achieve what it has achieved. So to say that this government should take advantage of the kind of wisdom we have at our disposal as a country is being very ambitious, but we've realized, we've seen that whether it's Dr. Manmohan Singh's letter, whether it's Sonia Ji's letter, whether it's Mr. Rahul Gandhi's suggestion, or whatever suggestions that we have tried to give to this government, very reluctantly, they have had to accept those suggestions because it's in the interest of the country, frankly. So India's journey at achieving the universal immunization has had people like Mr. Jairam Ramesh and Sam Pitroda, not just as witnesses of history, but as people who've been kind of travel guides in that journey. They've guided governments, they've guided political leaderships, and we've achieved what we've achieved. So let's start with Mr. Sam Pitroda. What's the difference you see in the India of 80s when you changed the immunization program to UIP, and India of the 21st century, which we are in today, facing this crisis?
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm delighted to be with Jairam Ramesh, who made a substantial contribution in the early days on immunization. So let's go back a little bit to give you an idea of how it all started. Rajiv Gandhi had this dream to take India into 21st century with pride, with focus on Indian values, enhanced democracy, freedom, and part of that equation was to really focus on our children, because that was the future. And their health was the key. So one of the elements was immunizing our children. We had immunization, but it was not organized effort. So Rajiv Gandhi had focused on set of technology missions. The idea was to bring technology to benefit people at the bottom of the economic pyramid. The idea was to use technology as an entry point to bring about generational change. The idea was to democratize technology. The missions were related to rural drinking water, literacy, immunization, edible oil, telecom, and milk production. Immunization was one of the most important missions. The idea then was to really immunize large number of children. India had the largest number of polio patients in the world, and we were not making any polio vaccine in our country. I'm sure we'll talk more about it because Jairam can give you a lot more details on how we call this meeting of polio experts and all that. But I just want to set the stage that the idea of immunization mission was also rooted in one, listening to the public, getting non-government agencies involved, open to media. So all of these ideas were rooted in institution building, rooted in role of civil society, was rooted in scientific mindset. And I see all three being challenged today in many ways. Okay. To me, these three were very fundamental. The role of civil society in immunization program, literacy program, water program was very important, NGOs. Today, civil societies have very little space. Institution building, whether starting production of vaccine in India, then India hardly made any vaccine. Today, India is the largest producer of vaccines in the world. And credit goes to initiatives taken during immunization mission. People don't understand, they have short memory. So when some people say nothing got done in last 50 years, I feel sorry for their ignorance. They don't mean what they say, and they don't say what they mean. So I think immunization journey, as we'll discuss more now, has taught us a lot of lessons. One lesson that I would emphasize today in light of what is going on is that we must listen to the voices of the people. We must invite others for ideas and input. Civil society, domain experts, institutions, and we must have scientific mindset. So these are the issues I hope we can discuss, but I'm sure Jairam will have a lot to say.
So before Mr. Jairam Ramesh gives his inputs, Mr. Sam Pitroda spoke about the lessons learned. Mr. Ramesh, during those days, the media as we see it today, both conventional and non-conventional media, was, if I'm allowed to say it, in a stage of infancy as compared to what we see today. Spreading your message to and fro, both, as Mr. Sam Pitroda said, listen to people. Listening to people and talking to people was both not as easy as it has become today. So what were the challenges from a communication point of view? If you could also highlight that, we would all be very grateful.
Well, remember that the objective of the technology mission of immunization was to immunize 25 million infants every year.
Right.
20 million pregnant women every year. This was the objective. And this was not a immunization against one disease. It was to provide immunization against 6 vaccine preventable diseases: diphtheria, pertussis, which is whooping cough, tetanus, tuberculosis, polio, and measles. So really, DPT was one vaccine. So we were providing 4 vaccines, one for DPT, one for tuberculosis, one for measles, and one for polio. So 4 vaccinations for 25 million infants every year and 20 million pregnant women. So, this is a huge
massive task.
The pregnant women didn't get the polio and the measles vaccines, but the infants certainly did. So look at the magnitude of the challenge we were talking. Secondly, as Sam mentioned, some of these vaccines were being produced in India, tuberculosis vaccine, for example, but the polio vaccine, 2/3 of the